Welcome to this new edition of my podcast, Show Me the Magic, where I invite founders or from companies which I find interesting to showcase in this podcast because of the quality of their user experience. And today, I have the privilege to welcome after a few months of back and forth via email because he was super busy. Rodrigo Nader, who is the founder of Langflow. A service which you can find at langflow.org. And so today we will chat about Langflow and first chat about Rodrigo. What has been your journey leading to founding Langflow?
Hi, Frederick. Thanks for having me. So a long journey. I actually started as a machine learning engineer. Coming from a civil engineer background, to be honest, and migrated to self-taught through these online courses such as MIT OpenCourseWare, Coursera, that kind of stuff. By the time I'm living in Brazil, in the countryside of Brazil. So my journey was one that when you try to find a job as a machine learning engineer in this region over here, it was very hard, especially in the midst of 2015, right? Mm-hmm. So I came from this area and tried to find a way to start working with that online, right? And data science by the time was becoming very popular, right? I remember I was reading a magazine called Towards Data Science, and there were a couple of articles coming through related to data science that were catching my attention, and I started trying to write as well, right? And they invited me to write for them, and that got me a little bit of contacts, right, in the world for service providing. I joined a couple of companies in the space, a couple of startups. Joined a company called Bit4 Corp in California, where I met Greg Bocher and Jeff Drake, which were sort of mentors for me for my entire career. And inside of Bit4, and even before that, we entered into the space of creating, training, and improving machine learning models, right? And that's been the background of my career for a long time, which is, hey, training natural language processing models, training image recognition models, training time series models, and so on for prediction, forecasting, and so on, right? And together with that, I had this little side project called Logspace by the time, founded in 2021, where I met Gabriel. Gabriel is the co-founder of Langflow, right? When I met Gabriel, today we are in GPT version 4.5, right? When I met Gabriel, he was playing around with GPT-2. Right. So, which meant to me in this countryside of Brazil, countryside of Brazil, in a very, very countryside city, meeting a guy that was playing with that, by that time, it was like, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. And we started chatting and teaching each other about this kind of stuff. And then we had this idea of, hey, let's start providing services in this space. So this became sort of a side project that grew with time. And then Langflow came as a consequence of understanding the needs, right? So basically a project that came out of understanding the needs of users that we were already providing services to, if that makes sense.
You wanted to have your own tooling to serve those users in a way. And I guess you started using what was under the hood of Langflow before creating this user interface, this visual builder that is Langflow. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. And by the time we were seeing an emergence of machine learning models becoming very popular, right? I don't know if you remember that, but by 2016, I guess, TensorFlow, the open source, the framework for building neural networks from Google, got open sourced, right? And that was a boom in the space. And then there was PyTorch as well. And people started to develop these better and better algorithms. So CNNs, LSTMs, and then transformers came through. Right. And transformers were a disruption in, especially related to language models, but other algorithms as well. And Hugging Face released their Transformers library and made that much more accessible to everyone because it was much more high level than these other frameworks, right? And within the Hugging Face hub, I remember you would see all these kinds of models, right? So, for example, models specifically to build image recognition, another one just for image detection, another one just for image classification or segmentation. So inside one model, you would have a variety of different kinds of models, and each one trained with their own like data sets, their own databases, and so on. And then from image to audio to video to text, and LLMs actually, like by the time LMs, right, language models, were just one more type of model, right? If you think of it, a language model is nothing more than a system that tries to predict the next token, right? The next, let's say for layman, the next word, right? It's a model that tries to predict the next word. And it came out that a couple of folks were sort of working around these models to predict the next word. In a way, they were sort of hacking it in a way that it would predict the next word and then run it again to predict the next word, right? And that evolved into something that people realize is much more powerful than the other models because it could, in the end, communicate, right? Which is the way that people can understand stuff. So language models sort of become one more popular kind of model compared to the other ones. But the idea with Langflow by the time was, okay, if we have all of these different types of models and we want an AGI system behind the scenes or like towards AGI behind the scenes, the idea would be to connect them, right? So imagine a place where you could connect models with other models and eventually connect these models with external systems, right? And we would call, by the time we would call, I think these little connectors like the experts, right? The external systems, I think, is what people today call, and today people would call those experts agents, right? And the external systems is probably what today people call tools, right? So the way that you interact with external systems. So that was, I think, the idea behind Langflow.
And how long were you completely independent before joining or being acquired by DataStax?
Well, Langflow lived for no more than a year before DataStax. Logspace, the company, was created in 2021. But we tried several products before Langflow. So we had like small little data science projects like time series related or data labeling projects. There was one of them that we were fond of called data centric. We almost released it, but by the time we were talking about, hey, you know what, this new kind of technology is becoming more important. I think it's time we pivot very fast before we miss the wave. Right. So we did it. We had this idea of the connectors and we say, why don't we start with a canvas for Langflow? And it started with Langflow started being a front end or UI for LangChain, right? When we found LangChain, I remember Gabriel came to me and said, hey, maybe this could be a way for us to start with that idea, right? And I said, this could be the backend in the beginning for what we were thinking. So Langflow emerged as a front end for LangChain. And then this was in the beginning of 2024, I guess, right? Or the beginning of, well, and when was ChatGPT again? Is that October of 22 or 23?
22, late 22. Yeah.
So that was 23, right? So in the beginning of 23, we started Langflow. And in the beginning of 24, so in the middle of 23, we got reached out by a couple of investment funds. OpenAI reached out, by the way. We were just in the beginning of a project, like 5 months old. And OpenAI reached out to connect us to a couple of partners. And we were like, wow, OpenAI is talking to us. And so I'm super excited. And then in the beginning of 24, the Stacks reached out. And we ended up closing with them. We didn't plan to go with the acquisition, but I remember Kat came along and said, hey, you know what? I know you're not looking for an acquisition right now. Listen to what we have to say. It might be a good fit. She reached out to us and brought the rest of the team to start a conversation. That went well for the next week. So.
And what was the main motivation that they expressed to to acquire Langflow? What was there for them? I mean, besides the quality of the tool, but also a way to maybe to boost their distribution through all the potential users that will use Langflow and then need their own services. I mean, for a native integration with Langflow.
Yeah, for data stacks, I see data stacks as a company that they had a very solid product, or more than one, right? Astra DB and DSC. And what DataStax was doing was much more toward the database space than the AI side of things, right? So the idea was, how can we quickly get into this AI space, right? And merge what we're doing with Astra, for example, into the AI space and get developer adoption, because DataStax has been very good with enterprise already.
And they already had the vector database when they
Exactly.
acquired. Yeah, yeah.
And the
Okay.
Cassandra stuff and AstraDB. So they were in that migration, right, from just traditional database to vector database and RAG and so on. And I think Langflow was sort of a way for them to fully, like, to nail down on, yeah, we are AI native. This is one part of it. Second, we are a big community, because Langflow by the time already had 20K stars in GitHub, right? So it was becoming like growing in hype and so on. Plus, it is an entry for a UI to build any kind of AI application, not only RAG, right? So it was this kind of fit for them to just say, hey, you know what? We're gonna have this open source project in the middle of what we're building, right? And then these tools are going to integrate with this open source project. So, for example, we never charged for Langflow in data stacks so far, right? Open source Langflow continued being open source, and you can use Astra DB from within Langflow as components, right? So that's sort of.
And the last part, the last phase so far, at least of your journey with data stacks, and now is IBM, because they joined IBM. What is the difference for you? Does it make any difference in your roadmap, in your priorities, in the way you see the evolution?
Yeah, that's interesting. So just to give some context to the listeners, we started with a company that had 15 people, right? Then DataStax, I think they had like 700 to 1,000 employees, something like that. And then now we're moving to a company that has 300,000 employees, right? So that's a big shift. I think there are two sides of the coin when we're talking about this kind of transition phase is typically hectic, right? You have to stop a lot of things because of the transition. You slow down a little bit because of the transition process, right? In that sense, I think their stacks by the time was very smart. I remember Chat and Ed, what they said is, hey, everyone in data stacks, don't talk to Rodrigo and Gabriel in the beginning of this acquisition, because we want them to keep the pace that they already have as a startup, right? And only then we started actually integrating. And I feel like IBM is doing something similar with data stacks. They're letting the processes run in the same speed that they were. Of course, there are slowdowns here and there, in the sense of, yes, there is more red tape, there are more processes always. It's impossible not to have when you're joining a bigger company. But on the other hand, uh, you accomplish stuff that you would never accomplish without them, right? So, for example, if you see Langflow today versus what Langflow was like 6 months ago, you're going to be shocked. It's a completely different product. It's much more professional. It has enterprise customers that we would probably take years to get, right? And it's a much more mature, stable, and complete product than it was before. And I think people often undermine the value of when you're joining a bigger company like that, right? And I think what I feel in IBM is the same thing, but exponentially, right? I see IBM with a will to invest and in something like Langflow. We know like IBM has a big good history with open source, with Red Hat stuff, with projects like ACP on the protocols, doing a parallel with MCP, but for agent connections, right? Also, Dockling is another open source project that they have, and Dockling, by the way, is already being integrated with Langflow. You're gonna see Dockling in Langflow next week. So we already feel this will from everyone to make Langflow grow around tools that IBM has.
Do you feel a good momentum, a good velocity for IBM in the AI space? Because I mean, I don't know how old you are, but probably much younger than me. And for people who remember IBM, I mean, obviously the computers, and then IBM moving to services. IBM was kind of the first brand that people knew in the AI space with Watson. I've just checked, and Watson was launched around 2004, and there was this Jeopardy victory in 2011. So before all the DeepMind victory against, in chess or in Go or whatever, you had Watson victory in 2011. So I would expect IBM eager to make a strong comeback in AI.
Yeah, and I hope, and I'm very excited for that, to be honest. And I hope that we can be a part of that, either with Langflow or with something together inside IBM. I really feel the same thing that you're saying over there. It sounds like the acquisition from DataStax from IBM to DataStax is the plan is to enhance AI as well, right? Bring these solutions, RAG, agentic RAG, MCP integrations, and so on inside of what they have. DataStax already have a big set of enterprise customers, as I said, that are going to be transferred right now to IBM. And the feeling is only growth right now. Maybe an integration for a cloud distribution of Langflow inside one of the products that IBM has. We don't know yet, but there are already a lot of strategic documents being drafted out, and we're already starting discussions. So the pace so far, it's very early to say. The pace has been faster than what I thought, and so far, very excited and looking forward to.
I expect also that they will, want to have a slice of the cake in the agentic world, because you see Mark Benioff at Salesforce betting everything on Agentforce. You see, all those initiatives. So IBM, I mean, if they do it properly, they might also find their way into the agentic revolution, I guess. So now I think it's time to dive into what attracted me to this conversation. Your application, Langflow, and as you said a few minutes ago, it has changed a lot over the last 6 months. Because the first time we had a chat on LinkedIn, it was after I tested it. I think it was still the default path was still to try it for free on DataStax website. I downloaded it yesterday, and now I downloaded it straight on my Mac. So it's a native app. Oh. And I already discovered something you will probably show us, but that now you also have the MCP sharing option. Before you had the API endpoint sharing option, but now it's the MCP paradigm that's very popular too. And I watched a few demos also what you can do with the MCP locally, and that's really cool. I think it's one of the selling points of Langflow, this frictionless MCP option. Let's have a look at what we can do with Langflow today.
All right, so what you're seeing over here is the starter page of Langflow. Over on the sidebar here, you have your projects, right? And a project means a couple of flows. Okay, so you can, inside of the same project, you can have a couple of different flows, and you can start a flow by clicking on this new flow button, and you see a couple of templates to start with, right? So either you start from one of the use cases that we already have for you, or you can just create a blank flow, and that's what I'm going to do. And what I'll try to show you here is first how to create a very very simple agent, right? Let me show you what Langflow means in terms of like agent creation, and then we can dive a little bit into how it works for RAG, and maybe what are the kinds of integrations that we have, how to expose that to via MCP and API. Okay. So starting with the agent, what we have over here is in the Canvas sidebar, you can drag and drop components to the screen, and these components are exactly like you would think of a data pipeline. Okay, so you have, in this case, let's suppose I'm gonna connect a chat input into my agent, and then I'm going to connect the agent to the output of a chat as well, right? And this output, remember, it could be something else that is not a chat, right? For example, it could be connected to an integration and send this to a webhook, whatever. So, but let's say, okay, let me start a basic conversation. This should basically do nothing, right? Just respond to me. So hi, what comes out, and hopefully you're gonna see, hello, how can I assist you today? Cool. Now, what you are going to do with an agent in Langflow is you're going to connect it to tools, right? And everyone by this point already knows what tools are. If you don't know, see a tool as an ability that you're going to add to your agent. One way that I like to see these are agents as a brain and the tools as a new ability to that brain, right? Like those scientific movies where people connect something to the brain of the robot and it learns something new, or it now can access something new. That's how I see that. So a tool is this new ability to the brain. So let's say I'm gonna ask to this model. Let me actually connect a tool first. So calculator. I'm gonna use the most basic tool in Langflow. So a calculator is a component that will make operations based on strings, right? So this is a strings text. Okay, so if I play this guy, what is going to come out is a data object with the result. Cool. Now every component in Langflow, they have this little tool mode. So what you can do is you say, yeah, but I don't want to use this calculator in a traditional pipeline way, because I could as well have some input connecting to this expression and pass the data forward and that for downstream processing, right? But over here, what I want to do is I want to connect, or I want to convert it into a tool and add that as an ability to my model. Okay, so let's try something as how much is, and now let's do something very complicated so that the model wouldn't be able to do by itself. Let's do, instead of this, let's do times to be very, very human centric, right? And hopefully it's going. So look at that. What it did, if you click this card on the AI action, you're going to see the intermediate steps. So execute it, evaluate expression, and then the expression is this. It converted the expression properly, and then it got the result back from the calculator, and now it gave me the answer, right? So that's basically what you can do with Langflow with all kinds of components, right?
I wanted to ask you for the tools. Is there a good practice when you add a tool to name it so that the agent knows which tools to use, or is there something that's under the hood? I mean, probably for the pre-made tools, but where do you actually name the tools?
Yeah, I can show you this right now. So there is, when you plug the tool mode, right? When you click over here and toggle that button, you're going to see a couple of actions, right? This, when we say the tool mode, the component itself is what we call a tool set, right? And tool set has a couple of tools or actions, right? And inside of these actions, you can configure how their names, their description, and how the agent is going to understand them. So basically, if I change the description over here, that's what the agent is reading and understanding when to use this action. Okay, so this is very important, by the way. Like, people tend to undermine the value of descriptions for tools. So let me give you a better example of how. Well, let's start with another one. Let's say I have a URL component.
Because then it gives you access to the web, basically.
Yeah, let's try. It's ibm.com. Let's see what comes out. I never tried this one. So what this component does is it's going to extract the text content of a website, right? And the depth controls how many links you want to access inside of the first link, right? So basically, I could get the first one or every link inside of the first one, or recursively, right? If you increase depth. In this case, I just want to get the first one, and I want the result as raw content. So basically, I just want the text, right? I don't want a table or data frame. So here is the output of my component, is the content inside of IBM. Now, let's say I want to plug that into my agent, right? I'm going to tool mode that. And you see there's an action now called fetch content. Let me plug that guy in to the agent, and let's ask. So summarize what's an IBM website. Let's see if it's going to be smart. Yeah, fetch content. So we knew how to use it, and there you go. Okay, nice. Now, the nice thing with Langflow is that it's not limited to the tools and components that you see in this sidebar. We have a lot of them, right? So the basic components for agents, models, vector stores, processing functions, logic, for example, looping, if else. But also, if you want to integrate it with bundles or providers, we have a lot of providers. So you're going to see a huge list of providers over here. But the idea here is that Langflow is not limited to no code. If you want to create your own component, you can click this new custom component button, and you see a component that you can edit, right? And this is going to open Python code that you can add. And why I think this is powerful, and we started thinking about that back then, is because the entire AI, machine learning, data science landscape is built in Python, right? So the fact that you are natively working within Python over here, and you can create your own components and reuse them, save them to reuse later, is to me a big power of Langflow. So in this case, let me create a very simple component that will just extract the number of chars in a string, right? So the value is going to be the length of the input, right? This is basically doing nothing. I'm doing something so simple. But then if the input here is hello world, let's play it, and it will say 13. Okay, cool. Now, now the nice thing here is, let me go back to this component, and well, it's already there, but notice how there is a tool mode equals true in that parameter, the message text input parameter. There's a tool mode equals true. It means that this parameter over here can be controlled by an agent when tool mode is on, right? So let me click that, and you're gonna see that there are a couple of actions. In this case, just one of them. I call build output. So let's change this. Let's call this count chars, and use this tool to count the number of chars in a string. Okay. Now you have the count chars in the custom component. Just for visualization, what I can do as well is to change the name of the component, char counter. Okay. And I'm going to remove the description for now. Cool. Let me connect it over there and say, so it extracted the IBM summary. Let's ask it to count chars. So count the number of chars in that summary. Accessing count chars. So it executed count chars, and there you go, right? So it basically executed a tool that I just created with Python code. And think of this as a way for you to reuse your stuff as well. Because what I can do here is, hey, I have this count chars, I have this component, right? I'm going to save that. And from this point on, in any one of my flows, I have a char counter, right?
Two questions about that. The first one is, I guess that if you just copy paste the boilerplate code from a default module, you can easily use something like Claude or another agent and say, okay, I would like to achieve this result. Adapt this boilerplate for me so that I can create a custom module for Langflow. It's explicit enough that it can be understood by by any vibe coding tool, I guess, today.
Oh yeah. So we actually have a couple of them, right? Some of our devs developed in OpenAI, some developed in Cursor itself. So we have rules for
Mm.
Cursor to help creating custom components that we can actually share. We're trying to get to a decent set of rules so that we say, yeah, these are going to be the official way to create components automatically, right? But eventually, the goal would be to have a screen over here where you can have an AI assistant.
To repurpose the boilerplate. And another question was, because using, for instance, something like NA10, when you use the agent module, you need to go very deep in the system prompt because before you can attach it to the tools. But from what I understand here, it understands, at least for a basic set of tools on its own, which tools it has to use without the need of a system prompt in the agent component.
Yeah, you can add agent instructions, right?
You can, yes, yeah.
But it's going to understand by default. The tools are pretty comprehensive. What changes that and even improves that is are the MCPs, right? So what you can also do as an MCP capability in Langflow. MCP was added in Langflow from I think 1.3 version 1.3, and it became a very first class citizen in Langflow from them, right? And our goal is just to improve on that side, and we can discuss the reasons why MCP at this moment. I was myself a bit skeptical in the beginning, but it got me convinced for a variety of reasons. But the idea here is that you can literally like add a new MCP server, and you can paste the JSON of an MCP or a standard IO and so on, and then you're going to configure your MCP, and the MCP works exactly like a normal tool. You can use that as a normal component because the parameters of that MCP server will become parameters in your component.
I wanted to ask you, at some point, maybe in the past, to invoke, some other functions, were you using the Open API approach? Like a Swag Open API, and then you moved your preference to MCP, or are you still supporting Open API, coding Open API?
So we're supporting so the tool so that you know the tool calling mechanism on traditional tools, right? This is not using MCP. These traditional tools, these tools that I showed you, these ones are using the same mechanism that LangChain uses behind the scenes, right? So this agent is a LangChain agent behind the scenes, right? And for MCP, we are doing a different approach, right? Not necessarily LangChain. But the idea here is that we offer both. We don't want to. We want to be agnostic, right? For not to limit to one or another. Okay. So basically, I'm showing you how to build something over here, but then you have ways to expose, right? So let's say I created this flow. Now I want to expose that as an API, right? And that's the beginning of a real world project, right? So you can expose that flow itself. You can export that as JSON to share and so on, or you can create an MCP server, right? Which could be an interesting way to share not only one flow but the entire project. And let me show you that right now. So here I have, let me see, data extraction, right? Let's say I have a couple of, so these are a lot of reps, right? But let's suppose that I want to take all of these flows inside of a project and I want to share them, the entire project as an MCP server, right? What does that mean? That would mean that each one of the flows in the project become a tool in the MCP server, right? So this is what we added in these latest versions of Langflow. So I can edit tools over here. You have an MCP exposure guide over here, and then you can edit your tools and say, well, which ones do I want to include? I want to disable this and this and that, and I just want to keep these over there, and you can rename them and so on, and do whatever you want in the same way that you could, like changing the name and the description in the exact same way that you would change for traditional tools. And then we have this way so that you can auto install it or auto connect with Cursor, Claude, Windsurf, and adding more over here. But you can also copy the JSON command so that you integrate it with your favorite client, right?
And
So
when you
this
do
is
the auto install with Claude, it will open the local JSON with the config of Claude and add it or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
So the idea is think of Langflow of a agent factory, or I'm tending to say tempted to say an agentic RAG factory, right? Because it's agent, it's also RAG, right? So you add those together, and then you can expose that either via API or via MCP, right? And MCP is becoming stronger and stronger over here. So that's sort of the idea. So this is Langflow in a nutshell. I hope that takes a couple
Yeah,
of
that's a
questions.
very good one because you can, as you said, declare all of your project components as functions in the MCP, which is it's pretty cool. I mean, it's probably one of the easiest ways to create an MCP server, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And we're also touching more capabilities to that. So, for example, one of the things that are coming together probably in the next the 1.6 version. Next week we're releasing 1.5, right? And then we're gonna have 1.6 with something that is called the MCP Composer, which is, hey, okay, I like a couple of tools from this MCP, a couple from that one. Let me choose, and then just filter some, and I want to use two from this, one from that, and create a new server and add authentication on top of that,
Like
right?
a mashup
Yeah.
server. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can see Langflow also as this MCP aggregator, right? That could.
Very nice. Nice. If people want to use the API endpoint or the MCP server in an online capacity, they have to host Langflow somewhere.
Exactly. And these are different for different kinds of use cases, right? We want to be a system that will power AI applications in both ways, right? Either if it's for, hey, to support another agent. So I'm going to create because what is becoming, what is becoming very popular or very powerful right now is the ability to connect agents with other agents, right? Again, the expert idea. Having a single agent with a bunch of tools is very error prone because the agent gets a lot of context, it makes more mistakes. Tools that overlap in meaning or that overlap in functionality can be confusing to a single agent. So if you modularize agents and let them as small as they can be, they are typically more accurate and cheaper as well. So the idea is if you can create multiple agents with Langflow, convert them into MCP servers or tools in a single MCP server, and then connect them to a client that is another agent, right? Then you have this multi-agent system in a very efficient and simple way to build. Right? I'm gonna tell you, Frederick, I have a favorite podcast. It's called it's and it could be the case that I change after coming to yours, right?
Who knows?
But I really like this podcast called Mindscape Podcast. It's from Sean
Uh-huh.
Carroll. He talks about physics, philosophy, and science in general, right?
And we could talk about that also. But then we would need 3 hours like Alex Friedman.
We can schedule a weekend.
Yeah.
So what I did over here is it's a good example of RAG or agentic RAG in Langflow. What I did was I took all of the episodes from YouTube and I transcribed them with Langflow. So when I transcribed them, I got like 900 episodes or something like that. And from those episodes, I chunkinized them, basically split the text, right, in a way where I could extract chunks, sentences, right? And then from that, it was like I think around 80K or 100,000 chunks, and I vectorized that using AstroDB. So now I have this database, this vectorized database of chunks from the podcast, and then I created an agent that is supposed to pretend is Shankaro, right? So it should answer like Shankaro would answer. Okay, looking at chunks of episodes. So here I'm just showing you an example. What's the reason for existence? You're gonna have the answer. The reason for existence is a question that is like looking for chunks that Shankaro already talked about, but also trying to speak on his tone, but also looking at chunks of episodes that are over here. So extracting those
Yeah,
episodes.
the cool thing is that you have this observability part
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
chat of Langflow. So it's not totally a black box. You can see what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And then what it's doing here is linking the episode itself. So if I click over here, it's going to send me to the website where the episode is linked. So that's super cool. And yeah, so well, we could eventually do something like that for show me the magic.
And how is it under the hood, the Ask Sean? Can you show me?
Oh, you mean the flow itself? Let me see.
Yeah, the flow itself.
Yeah, I think I can. Mindscape. So here
It's a project. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a project. It's not a single flow. So I had a couple of flows that I needed to create. The first one of them was the generate data frame, right? So extracting first, I think I extracted the YouTube videos, or in this case, it's a different version. Okay, this is a different version where I extracted from his website, right, directly, because they had transcripts over there. So I extracted that over there, transcripts, and then I ran this component called batch run, right? The batch run is basically checking. So check if the link is about a podcast episode or not, because there were links that were not about it. Like there was a lot of junk that was not important to my use case, and also so for example, this a page 3 or design, etc. I didn't want that, right? I wanted the ones that were episodes. So what I did was I used this batch run component. It runs a language model over a lot of rows from a data set, right? And the batch run is basically saying true, false for each one of the episodes. And then a data frame operations is saying, hey, filter only the rows where the value is true. Okay. Where the model response value is true. And then what I had was a list of transcripts with the episodes with the transcribed episodes from Mindscape, right? Now, when I had that, I said, all right, so now I need to, it's been a long time that I don't touch these. So, what I did here is, all right, so now I added that to a file. So I had Mindscape final, final over here. What I did was, yeah, let me now chunkinize that, extracted only the rows, the columns I needed, added that to a split text component. Split text basically takes each one of the episodes, and it's breaking that into a lot of chunks, right? But keeping the metadata, what episode it comes from, etc. Right? And then I saved again, created another file called Mindscape final split. And now with the split, I created I have another one called I don't know. It's been a long time that I don't touch this. It's maybe in another folder. Sorry about that. But what I did is I basically took that split text, and I can do it right now for you to see. So how you would ingest data, right? So we have multiple ways to ingest data in vector stores in Langflow. I really like to use a local DB when I can for small projects because it's much simpler, right? So basically, what you would do is take the data frame with, in this case, file, select files, and I would add Mindscape final split. Okay. Then I would ingest over here, add an embedding to my local DB, and then it will basically just running this will, if I give it a collection name, let's say Mindscape, whatever. This just running this, it's 100K, right? So I won't run this just for the sake of.
But it's directly instantiating a vector DB on your computer then.
In this case, yes. In this case, the local DB is.
So yeah, you don't need to go online and create the collection there and get the keys and all of that. So
this is one way to go about it, right? When you have something big, which was this case, I didn't use the local DB. I used the Astra.
The Astra DB, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So basically the same thing, the same idea, but we'll ingest the data using an Astra application token, right? And then you're going to be using a third-party provider, or in this case Astra, but you could use any of the integrations that we have, right? We have a bunch of vector stores over here. So that's sort of the idea behind how you would vectorize something, okay? But let's say, right, now I have the vectorized the vectorized database. What do I do now? Let me update these guys. Update components. Okay. So what I did then is I created a prompt that said always search the database unless it's too obvious that it's not necessary. Use search terms in English, but answer the right. Don't include words like so. Just teaching some stuff to the model, and these are not agent instructions. Notice that these are instructions that are coming in the input, right?
Mm.
Why? Because because I wanted it to be reminded at every input. I wanted it to be a reminder of these small instructions, little instructions over
Yeah,
here.
you're just appending the input at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. And while I have more like robust instructions in the B, right? But that's sort of a summary to avoid it to make mistakes, right? And then I have all of these agent instructions over here, like use the like you should use the vector store, what to do, the speaking style. So I pretended I know something about Shankero and just created the speaking style over here.
I want to ask you for the agent instructions, when would you advise to write them straight into the widget there versus writing them in a connected component? Because I saw sometimes that you connect there where you have the purple dot there. You would connect another component to put the prompt there.
Yeah, it's up to you. So, for example, it depends on what you want to do. Let's suppose, for example, that my agent instructions need to come from an external system, right? So, for example, let's say I want to do an API call, right? API request, and I'm gonna access a website. In this case, I want to, let's suppose, take something out of the API response. So I don't know, just to show you an example, right? I would convert that API response into a message type. So in Langflow, we have three data types, right? Message, this is text-like, okay? Data, which is JSON-like, and data frame, which is table-like, okay? So here, imagine that I wanted the output of a GET request as the agent instructions, right? We leave these handles in the case that you don't want to fill directly, but you want that data coming out from another component. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
when if you have a library of prompts somewhere or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you would be impressed with what people come through, right? For example, it could come from an instruction from someone sending a message from WhatsApp, right? And that message comes over here, which is like processed before it comes into the agent instructions, right?
Can you use also that part of the pipeline as a variable for the system prompt that will be written straight into the module, straight into the component, like the in the same way you appended the chat input to the other component there, you would have
Exactly.
something external that could be a variable fed into the system prompt also, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So anything, it's supposed to be anything is pluggable, right? There are a couple of specific fields that we avoided, at least on the native components, to let them pluggable because they would people using them in the wrong way could cause a lot of inconsistency. For example, model names and API keys and so on. But again, everything in Langflow is customizable. So even if you say, well, I want my API key to come from another way, you could open the code and change that, right?
I see it has evolved a lot since I last tested it 6 months ago. And how do you see the future in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years of Langflow? How do you position yourself? Because now you've added MCP also as a way to share the flow, as a way also to add tools to the flow as you showed me. Is there anything that you can share, strategically speaking, that's coming or that's in your mind, a dream of Rodrigo about Langflow?
Yeah, so I think we have a couple of ideas of where we want to get with it, right? I think more and more we want to go towards this path of uh, enabling people to create general purpose systems, all right? But also solving cases. In the end, if you think about the mission of Langflow, is more like democratizing AI for real world applications. Okay, so it's not only about one use case, but it's looking at the legal use cases, looking at game development, looking at code bases, and solving for those. And for that, we needed for us to be super robust, super, uh, it needs to have the tools that make the experience for those developers good enough so that they would use Langflow instead of going directly to the code. And that includes stuff like that includes first a lot of AI assisted tools, right? Especially these days. We're talking about vibe coding inside of Langflow. How are we going to do that? That's one of the things. We're talking about how multi-agent orchestration will occur inside of Langflow in different ways, right? Because we're doing multi-agent by tool calling. But what if we could have ways where imagine a project, right, where each one of the flows could be seen as one of the experts, and experts could call other experts, and then suddenly you could have a system of tasks behind the scenes that is being populated by tasks of these systems. We've been calling them actors, right? These actors. We have the stage where the actors play, right? And the actors being these players that are coordinating with each other. And each one is creating tasks and assigning tasks to each other. And you can think of a centralized system where you would have some sort of PO or so that coordinates everyone's tasks. Or you could think of a more decentralized stage where the players are giving tasks to each other, right? But behind the scenes, we would have a task management system where things are happening in parallel.
And how would you approach maybe the improvements in the presentation when the flows become very complex and when the nodes connection can become overwhelming? Have you thought about a way maybe to have some kind of alternative views on the flows so that you can, for instance, observe the flow of information, observe the hierarchy of the different actors, for instance, because on the open canvas, more like the Figma paradigm in a way, it's amazing because it gives you a lot of freedom. But then it can become messy when people don't organize properly their components. So is this something you're thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of steps towards that. The number one is first part of that is trying to declutter the canvas itself. And how we're doing that is we are instigating people to create multiple flows instead of a single flow for a task, right? How you do that is we have something called run flow. Okay, this is a component that will run something that you created with another flow. So let's say I created as the system that I showed you over here. The first part is pre-processing the data, right? And then I'm gonna take that pre-processed entire flow, and I'm gonna group that. And by grouping that, I'm basically making that available as a component to other flows in the same project, right?
Yeah, and other flows elsewhere. So you become fully modular. You can reuse then your flows.
I think that is the path for Langflow. Is a how do you call that? Visual programming with complete modularity, right? I think that's the path to go with Langflow. We're not yet on the tracing, etc. parts being native, right? We're not talking about that yet. We're still relying on external partners or external systems for tracing, for example, Langfuse, Langsmith, and so on. But we think that once we reach that modularity, right, then I agree with you, we're going to need a top level layer where you can see, okay, between these 20 different flows, how can I see what's going on? Where do I see everything that is talking to everything, right? And that
the movements in the factory, the movements in the workshop in real time, which is important. And I wanted to ask you, what's the craziest advanced use case you've ever seen that you can share? Something made by Langflow user that really blew your mind.
That's cool. That's a cool one. There are a couple of them. I think one there is a PR that one of the users did that was Langflow is not made for video or for image or let me rephrase that. Langflow does not natively accept those, right? We have integrations and we have ways to use image and video and other models inside of Langflow, but it's mostly still for data to tables, JSON data responses, right? And text. But one of the users, they created a sort of a security system where there is a camera in the house looking at the house, and everything that is going on is being transformed into text and then being analyzed by an LLM. That was super powerful because it was running in real time, and I was like, wow, like how did they even build something like that, right? But there are a lot of in Langflow. We have use cases that vary from document structuring to creating NPCs, right? Okay, not non-play characters, uh, to, let's say, uh, tools that will there are a bunch of cases. Let me think which ones I wanna show you over here. There is something called talk to data, right? You will convert your sentence into an SQL. From the SQL, talks to the data, comes back as an insight or images or charts and so on, and then you're going to analyze that.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about it, to ask you if you already have use cases like accountants using Langflow to query accounting data. Is it something that you've already seen, or querying data from a data lake or something like that?
For the data lake or querying from databases, that's a lot. So one of the big benefits of having something like Langflow. You query data from a data lake or a database, and then you're going to do something with the data, right? For accounting specifically, I have talked to people using it for accounting. I don't know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. But I know, for example, for contract, extracting information from contracts, right? So let's say you have a contract or like 100 pages, and you need to extract specific information from inside of that, right? That's something that I see a lot. People that are using Langflow purely for data extraction, because the model is going to look into that and make sure that, yes, this is, for example, this contract is expiring, because in the middle of the contract, there is a date saying something over there. And then it's converting that into a table that is going to warn alerts or something like that.
I'm working a lot at the moment on this concept of headless ERP. I don't know if it speaks to you. It's this idea that we might, with the AI, leapfrog or skip the user interface layer, so that you would be basically in a conversation with your data. So I guess that's something also where you can play a role in this evolution to a headless ERP system. So. Yeah, because people are usually struggling with tons of legacy UIs. They have to go from screen to screen. They need people to explain how to use those interfaces. So if they can be closer to the metal, I would say, and query the data directly,
Yes,
that's probably the evolution. We could speak for hours about it. There's so much to see, and I invite everyone to go and download Langflow on your website, langflow.org. It's free to use, and there are many ways also to deploy it online if you want to expose the API endpoints and use it as, in a way, the smart brain of one of your applications. It can be one of the use cases for that, giving you visual access to what's under the hood to configure your application. So congratulations for all the work, Rodrigo. I guess it will keep you busy for the years to come, this project. Thank you again for being with us. Is there anything you wanted to add to close the podcast? Some things that you would like to invite people to do besides downloading Langflow?
Absolutely. Langflow is a community, right? It's not a product, just a product from a company. It's a community of people helping and sharing as well. So if you want to be part of it, join us. We are on GitHub. Join our Discord. Enter langflow.org and try to see what you find over there. And we're happy to see your use cases as well. We tend to capture use cases and try to help you with your use cases as well. We're trying to listen more and more and build stuff around what you're doing. So invite everyone to be a part of it. And thanks, Frederic.
Thank you. I see you on Discord then. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.